Myth. We didn't have myth in Mississippi. We had old wise tales, old fairy tales, and lies. Plain old lies. You know, in the summertime, they would come home, my parents that is, from the fields, and they would sit on the front porch and tell stories. Now, on our front porch, we had a green and white waffle back glider. We had a green and white waffle back chair and a rocker. And so they would sit out there and tell these stories. And if you were a child, none of them were meant for you. So what you had to do was get out of sight, go somewhere and sit down and be quiet. But I sat in the living room and I heard them say one day that one of my schoolmates had eaten a watermelon. She had swallowed the watermelon. And I said, "What?" And they said, "Get away from here, gal. Go somewhere and play." But as time went on, I found out she was pregnant. I didn't know she was pregnant. And then another time they were talking about another schoolmate, and they said the snake had bitten her. And I said, "What? Get away from here, girl, and go somewhere and play. Always meddling in grown folks' business." Come to find out, she was pregnant too. Well, they'd always told us that turtles don't die when they're dead. That seems strange, doesn't it? But anyway, this particular Saturday, we were preparing chickens for the freezer, and my job was to wash dishes. So while I was washing dishes, I decided to run down to the pond and set my pole in the earth so that it wouldn't be pulled up. And I was going to catch me a fish. Ran back to the house, went in the kitchen, washing dishes and looking out of the window. And as I was looking, after a time, I saw my pole do this. And it did this. And so at the same time, my daddy saw it. He was driving his bus down the sidewalk, down the side road. He saw it. He stopped that bus, ran down the hill, crossed over the fence, and grabbed that pole. I ran out of the back door, down the hill, through the fence, and assisted my father with catching my big catch. Daddy grabbed that pole and he pulled that pole and he jerked that pole and he pulled it back and he stepped back and he pulled it, but that fellow was giving it a hard time. So finally Daddy kept jerking and jerking and he got it right to the edge of the water and he said his cuss word, "Dat flippit, a darn old turtle." And I said, "What?" Well, don't you know, that hook was stuck way down in the throat of that turtle. But Daddy took his knife and he cut the hook out and he gave it to me, went back to his bus to continue his trip. And I took the turtle and went back to the backyard where they were killing chickens. So my aunt was out there and she had a big butcher knife. And she took that knife and cut that turtle's head off and threw it on the ground. And my brother said, "He dead now." I said, "No, he's not. That turtle is not dead." My brother said, "Yes, he is." I said, "No, he's not." He said, "Yes, he is." I said, "No, he's not." He said, "Yes, he is." I said, "Look, the turtle doesn't die until after sundown." He said, "That turtle's head is on the ground. How in the world could a turtle's head be on the ground and he be alive? No way." I said, "Okay, you bad here. You take this head and put your finger in his mouth if you so bad." So he sheepishly took his finger and he eased it up in the turtle's mouth. That turtle clamped down and he said, "Ah!" So then he started crying. And we started laughing because we told him, but he wouldn't listen. But I guess you might know by now that he is a believer. So then they were sitting on the porch another day. They were sitting out there rocking and fanning and chewing the fat. And I heard one of them say, you know, Sally died the other night. Sally? You mean Sally that lived down there in the park of the road? Yeah. What happened to Sally? Well, she went to that fish fry Friday night. Down there eating all that catfish. And it was hot, you know. So she went in there and got her a big glass of milk. Now she know you can't drink milk and eat fried fish. Child, they tell me she sat down and it wasn't long before she had killed over dead. What you say? I bet they're going to bury her Saturday. Yeah, and you know Mr. Johnson going to be buried Saturday too. Mr. Johnson? Yeah, he died. What happened to Mr. Johnson? Well, Mr. Johnson got to eating watermelon, and he ate too much. You know how folk are. They get something good and they can't stop. So he ate his watermelon, and then he got sick. So he decided he'd get him a big glass of soda water and lay down. Well, he knew better. But don't you know what? They went in there and checked on him later, and do you know he was dead? Dead as a doorknob. Well, he gonna be buried Saturday too, my Lord. So, a few days passed, and I had been eating watermelon. I was a child, and I didn't know any better. So, I got a stomach ache. And do you know, before I thought about it, I had gotten me some soda water and laid down. Well, everybody was gone out of the house except me. So I laid on my cot. And after I laid down, I thought about what they had said. That if you do that, you were going to die. So I wasn't scared. But I went in there and I laid on my cot. And I know that everybody that died, they always was on their back. I hadn't been but to a few funerals, but they always was laying on their back. And they had their hands crossed their chest like that, and I did that too. And then they had their eyes closed, and I closed mine too. And I laid there, and I was thinking, what they gonna say when they find me up in here dead? I wonder who's gonna cry. Oh, I can hear some of them now, crying out loud. I wonder what they gonna put on me. I can see my classmates all walking by my casket looking down at me. And then suddenly, the front door opened. And it was my cousin. He came in the room, he said, don't y'all know Aunt Belle's house is on fire? I said, Aunt Belle's house is on fire? What? Hopped up from there, ran through the living room, out over the porch, down the hill, crossed the highway, down another hill, jumped the creek, went up the hill, and by then I was tired. And we got up there and the house was burning. I mean, it was burning. It was too late to go inside. There was nowhere to go inside. But the sad part was there was no telephones, no water, no fire trucks, no ambulance. Just trouble, sadness, pain, seeing everything that my aunt and her children owned. She had a husband too. It was going up in smoke. We were standing there hopeless, wondering what was going to happen now. So then, we stood around a while and talked and felt sad, and then we all decided to disperse. And so for us, we had to go back down the hill, jump the creek, go up the road, up a little higher, then go across the highway, up the other hill, and to the front porch. We had a screen door. We went in, went through the living room, through the little hallway, and down to the room where I was on the cot. And I looked at that cot all disheveled. Oh my goodness. I was supposed to be dead.